Hello everybody, Keith here again. I haven't done one of these for a while as I've got a few plants in flower. I thought I'd have a go and I'll have a look really at some plants that are in flower, a few that will be in flower before very long, and a couple that I'm not sure whether they will or they won't. And it might be handy for some of you guys to pass your comments. Right, so let's make a start. We'll start with probably the smallest I've got compared to my hand. You can see how small it is, and this is Phalaenopsis equestris. Bought it from Burnham's in August last year, and Sarah said, oh, it's not far off flower in size, just treat it like an ordinary Phalaenopsis, it'll be absolutely fine. And apart from the fact it sits in a humidity tray, because that's a suitable space for it, I don't treat it any different to any of the other of my Phalaenopsis. It's growing vegetatively as well as flowering. We've got roots coming out, as you can see there now. One of the things I've done to try and help me with maintenance, and you'll see this in some other pots, there's one in that Cattleya behind, is a red label. So for me, white labels are identities, red labels tell me what kind of fertiliser I've used last. So that's Phalaenopsis equestris. I don't know if it's a particular form of it, but I think that's lovely. I'd like the forms of Phalaenopsis that look more like this than, as a general rule, than the ones that are absolutely huge. But they have their place, of course. My No ID Cattleya. Bought this in 2018, just about 2 years ago, at RHS Wisley, I think. Don't think it was Harlow Car. I'm sure this was RHS Wisley. Yes, it was. I got this and I got a Nellie Isla, which I managed to kill. It's the second time it's re-bloomed. It's grown extremely well. Always grown well for me. It's got 2 leads, done well. It just didn't flower. And now it's, excuse the rumbles and bumps, my good lady's bringing the dustbin back around. It's dustbin day today in Derby, our part of Derby. So this was on offer. My first Cattleya, it didn't do anything whatsoever, except it grew well, and then last year it flowered for the first time, and now it's flowered for the second time. It's quite odd, because some of the older spikes, you can see where it flowered in the sheath. The 2 occasions, and it's the same lead that it's flowered on, for me, haven't had sheaths. They've grown straight out the top of the cane pseudobulb, whatever you want to call it. It's got another growth here, but that has only just opened the 2 leaves up, so it's not really shown me signs yet as to whether it's going to do any more than that. But I think that's quite a nice shape to a flower, and the white, there's something, I don't know what you could say about it, something rather nice about it just being that, just being white and plain, and you can appreciate the beauty of the flower itself. Psychopsis. I'm told not many people keep these anymore, because they can get very big, or very tall, because of the spike that just keeps extending. I got this again RHS Wisley in October, I think, 2019. We were going on holiday to Croatia and Macedonia and that part of the world, into the Balkans. And we called into RHS Wisley on the way down because Ruth, my wife, is a member of the RHS. We can go in there for free and they have some nice cafes. So we went in and had a break on our way down to Gatwick, and they'd got some of these. And you don't see a lot of them, so I thought, oh, that's interesting. But you can't do anything with them if you're away for 10 days or so. So I just kept my fingers crossed that they were going to be there when we got back. And when we got back, they got just this one. And the flowers were over, but it was there. And I bought it. And it wanted repotting. Knowing that these things like to be moist, I used a mixture of moss and bark and got it badly wrong, really. It was, granted it was sort of late in the year, it wasn't as hot as it can be in here, but it wasn't drying out very fast. It had 2 new growths, that was one of them, but the one on the opposite side of the plant just rotted off quite quickly. And in the end, what I did to get around it, as you can see, I absolutely peppered it full of holes. My soldering iron doesn't have a very big bit, so I had to put a lot of holes in. But it now dries out in just about a week under normal circumstances, and it seems to be extremely happy with that. Oops, get rid of that pot bottle, which I use occasionally to keep some fertilisers in. You can say this was the first new growth to mature. It's only now putting roots out, which seems to be a trait for some plants rather than early on, but yeah, we've got some roots, some of them are going down, I don't know where that one's going. We've got a nicely developed new growth there, and coming back round here we've got another one just there. So this the flower, although it's the second time it's successfully bloomed, technically it's the third. The previous one actually started to develop colour in the bud, and then we had a really hot spell and it got hot in here, and the plant aborted it, and I thought, oh dear, that's nailed out, we shan't see anything for a while. And that was far from it. The spike extended, and this emerged relatively quickly. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this thing is settled and it's happy, and we're okay for a bit. I'm sure I don't need to introduce Shelob Tolkien. Not a particularly impressive spike this time. There's another spike to come on this. Now this is, you will know if you follow my channel at all, is a plant which was far bigger, and I split it into 4, put 2 into each into 2 pots, kept one and did a swap with one of the members of Roger Frampton's Facebook group, Zane Rapper, and Zane sent me some plants in return, and I sent her 2 of these. Well, mine have both flowered. I'm not surprised it's not done as well. It's got nowhere near the bulk of the original plant, which has done better for me. So that's one that's kind of in transition because it's not been repotted all that long. One thing I have done, and you'll notice this on 1 or 2 plants, is that if it's a climber, and this can be a bit of a climber, you can get exposed roots, and rather than just let them dry out, I've put in a little bit of moss on the top. It doesn't always look great because you end up with algae on it, and it possibly needs looking at, but nevertheless it helps to maintain the roots, and you'll see something later on in the video just how effective it can be on occasion. Over at the back is Paphiopedilum American hybrid. That's been in flower. It's the last of 3 spike, but that one's been in flower forever. I'd have to look it up, but that plant's been in flower for a very, very, very long time. It's also putting up new growth, so that's doing really, really nicely. That's a good old favourite, that is. I bought that quite a long time ago, and it's always been very, very good. Grown well. Just treat it like a phalaenopsis, stick it on the kitchen windowsill, water it about once a week, feed it regularly, and away she goes. Just doesn't need any looking after at all. Got this one from Burnham's as a no ID zygote type. It's been identified for me as Zygonosia Rhine Blue Angel. I went for this rather than some of the other zygotes that Burnham's has got because it's not the normal zygote coloration. I've got a zygote which is identified for me as Rhine Clown, but I just thought this was sufficiently different to be worth picking up, and it's done very well. It's in plain bark basically, so not too fussy. It's growing quite well. I just tend to want to lean over, and again it's quite adept at climbing, so I've got some moss there and that really wants looking at, but that, as you can see, is not very firm, so that needs to be addressed. Now, I don't really suppose I should be claiming any great credit for this one. This is Miltonia breathless, probably the clone Florence. I bought this from Burnham's again, pretty much my favourite outlet, but this was a spike that came up after it came here, so it's not really my care that's made it flower. It was obviously just there anyway, but these have been open a little while and they're hanging on and doing nicely. But the thing that I'm really pleased with, because I really wasn't sure I was going to keep this, having killed a Nellie Isla, is it had 3 new growths on, and those growths are growing really well. A little bit of concertina work. I've got a theory about that. I don't think it's a common one. It's not always been a popular one when I've mentioned it, but my observation, and it's purely an observation, I'm not a botanist, I was a research, mechanical cum mining engineer in my working days, so that's all I can go by, so I go on observation. But what I've found is that when you've got plants that grow like this, where you've got one leaf inside another, the outer leaf always grows faster than the inner one. But if there's not enough humidity in the atmosphere, and I think to my mind it's humidity or even misting that's important as much as moisture in the pot, my feeling is that there's some secretion, I don't know what it is, what the purpose of it is, but what I think happens is that they get stuck together. And part of the problem is that this wants to grow faster than that one wants to grow. And it holds them back, and you start to get all kinds of leaves getting pulled in the wrong direction. You'll see a slight touch of that there where it's been pulled. Instead of going out that way, it's got pulled over a bit. So when I'm getting plants like this, I spray them, mist them. Not heavily, but they get a bit, and then I very, very carefully check these bracts and try and help them open if I can. So the last of the plants that are in flower is this one. This is bought as Leodoro, but Leodoro is supposed to be scented. Now, as far as I know, plants that were used to produce Leodoro were crossed one way, and there's an almost identical hybrid that was crossed the other way. And one's scented and one isn't, and this one isn't scented, unfortunately, because it's an extremely pretty plant. That's how it opens, and that's how it sort of fades off. This is a mad plant. That spike had been going and going and going for ages, and it dropped the last flower. And I was almost on the point of cutting the spike off and letting it go into growth, and it started to put new buds out again. So it's a difficult one to work with, is that. But yeah, that's the last of the plants which are in flower for me at the moment. So we'll just stop the video for a second, and then I'll come back and I'll show you just a few which might be coming into flower, some that are, and some that might be coming into flower. Okay, the nearly ones. This is Phalaenopsis minimark, and it's another one that doesn't know when to stop flowering. Had a spike which flowered for a long time, and when it finished I thought, don't want any more flowers on this one, let it grow for a bit. So I cut it off down at the stem. It's put out a new leaf, we can see some new roots under there, and we've now got another spike coming with buds that's going to be open before very much longer. There are times when you wonder what you can do. Exactly the same could be said of this one. This is my monster fowl. When you compare this one to Equestris, you begin to wonder if it's the same genus, never mind anything else. But this is Pink Twilight. It flowered not all that long ago. It flowered for a very long time on a very, very long spike, and just like I said just now, I thought this thing really needs to take a break and do some growing, and it put out a nice new leaf which hasn't finished growing yet. It's got loads of roots. In fact, it's probably getting well ready for a look at, but despite me wondering about it, now we're away again. We've got another huge spike that's going on and on and on, so who knows. Right, this is one I'm always pleased to see. This is Brassia Chieftain, bought as a no ID from a local garden centre several years ago. It has flowered before. This is an interesting one. When I bought it, it wasn't scented, and the last spike that came up had about half a dozen flowers on, and it wasn't scented until the last one opened. And I came down into the kitchen, because this lives on the kitchen windowsill. I came down the next morning, opened the kitchen door, and it blew me off my feet. It was very, very heavily scented. This is the latest new growth. None of the new growths has ended up that size, but it's grown. It's not a quick grower. It's far from a quick grower. Takes a long time to get going. Climbs a little bit. But the thing that's always, well, it bothered me a lot last time, but simply because I didn't understand the plant, is that it doesn't put any roots out from a new growth until it's started to develop the pseudobulb. So until you start seeing that, it's living off the rest of the plant. As you can see, this is high, so when it put roots, some of the roots went straight down, some of them didn't. This one went horizontally. So I thought, put some moss on the top. This was the first one I did it with, so I put some moss on the top and I've kept that damp. And this root went so far, came out through the thing and stopped. But I don't know how well you can see on there, but you've got what appear to be new root tips forming on the sides of that one, and a lot of them too. There's another root which went along, didn't quite get to the end of that, and that's now going down into there. But we also got some other roots, I'm not even sure where they've come from, that are coming back up again. So this is a plant that's doing really well. And now this also worried me, because after a little while this bulb turned brownish, as you can see. When I repotted it, I had to take a pseudo bulb off, and there's no sign of anything on the rhizome, whatever. It just appears to be one of those things that this plant does. This is my or one of my two now, Coleogyne fimbriatas. It's the bigger of the two. It's the one that flowered before. That's the one that flowered last year, I think. Not sure quite when last year. But this is the latest pseudo bulb. It's quite a lot bigger. If you look at that one there and look at this one, it's considerably bigger. And that has now got a sheath. Whether that will actually bloom, I don't know. I'd hope so, but I don't know. Right, one that I am keeping my fingers crossed with. This is Dendrobium Frosty Dawn. It's a really pretty black hair type, and it's not grown fantastically well, but it has grown. Now this is a cane. It was growing when I got it. Turned out there's actually two plants in the pot, and there still are two plants when I repotted it. But it's put this up, and my initial thought was, oh, it's a funny time of year, it's probably going to be a keiki. Well, it isn't. That doesn't look anything like a keiki structure to me at all. So I'm hoping that we're going to see, you only get one, I'll have that, because this came from a Taiwanese supplier at the Bournemouth Orchid Society 60th anniversary show in 2019, March 2019. So this plant has had a big shift. It's come all the way around the world from Taiwan, so it's had to adjust to time zones, as well as different temperatures and everything else. Now, one that I don't think is flowers, and I'm much more sure these are keikis, is this one. And that, I've lost it. That is Dendrobium Lady Coleman. It's the plant that has never flowered for me. And those don't look like flower buds to me. If they are, it's great. It's a really pretty plant. It's the wrong time of year completely. So, with that, I think I will call it a day. I will thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.